An organizational structure refers to how an organization operates, how they operate, how people in the organization are grouped, and who they report to. The most common one for childcare is the hierarchical organizational structure. So within that structure, there are different levels of management within the hierarchy of that organizational structure, and they usually have different groups that are in charge of different things. So there's also another structure called a matrix organizational structure, and within that structure, there's more than one manager, there's more than one um, individual to report to, and it's a different form of organization because there are different levels of authority. When it comes to team-based organizational structures, there's less of a hierarchy. So it's more of a collaborative working together. Individuals have common goals and individual tasks, but there's less people that they have to report to within that structure. With a flat organizational structure, there's little to no high level management teams or high level management kind of individuals to report to. It's more related to individuals having different tasks, and it's almost like having many managers on one level. So I'd like you to take some time to go and click the link and look at the organizational structural video, and then try to figure out which one was not mentioned in this particular video. In our previous class, we talked about this kind of structure within the Ministry of Education as it relates to licensing. And as many of you know, within a childcare setting, a licensed childcare setting, it is inspected by the ministry annually. There's a program advisor, as you see, if we go from the bottom up. Then there's a senior program advisor or the regional manager. And then you have senior management, a director, and a deputy minister, and then you have a deputy minister. So in this case, if you look at this structure, I wonder what organizational structure you might think this is. Now we're going to kind of switch gears and look at the supervisor. So if this is the supervisor who has 2 years of experience, they're in good standing, and they've also received a director's approval from the Ministry of Education to be that supervisor for this particular center, you are responsible for the day-to-day operation of the childcare center. You're also responsible for ensuring that the childcare center is fully implementing the Child Care and Early Years Act on a day-to-day basis, just responsible for the day-to-day operation. And that is the requirement of the supervisor. You may have an individual who now is an RECE and has a director's approval, or they have one of the three approved professions or qualifications to work with that junior school age group. So with the for-profit organization, a for-profit organization is one whose main goal is to make money. In the legal structure or the legal entity of a business, we have it as either profit or nonprofit. So these are the two kind of legal entities or the legal kind of definitions of a business. So when you open a business and you maybe in some cases want to incorporate it, you would have to pick an organizational structure. You would have to pick profit, for profit, or nonprofit. So in this case, for profit means what the title says. They are trying to generate income from selling goods or providing a service, something like that. So this is what for profit is. Can you move forward to not for profit or nonprofit organizations? These could be associations, they can be clubs, they can be societies, but they are not charities. And they are organizations, and the reasons that they have built this organization with this particular legal structure, many reasons. an organization would want to be profit or nonprofit. And in this case, when they're a nonprofit, it doesn't mean that they're not gaining income. It doesn't mean that they don't make revenue, but it means that when they do create a profit or they do have money or revenue, it goes right back into the organization, essentially given to any one owner to have as a profit for the in that way. So with the for-profit, if I'm the owner or the director, I make money in this business or program or whatever it may be, I can take the money and do whatever I want with it, and I can have the money, use the money however I want because it's my for-profit business. If I own this as a not-for-profit or a non-profit business, any money that is generated within that organization goes back into the organization. In most cases, not-for-profit organizations are run or governed by board of directors. So it's not any one person making all the decisions. It's a group of people, usually volunteer, that just kind of out or determine what the requirements are or the decisions are for a not-for-profit organization. What are your views on profit or non-profit licensed childcare programs? Have you thought about that at all? What do you think advocates believe? What do advocates say about the different legal structures for organization? Employment service standards. And within the employment service standards, just going to briefly look at the Ministry of Labor. So the Ministry of Labor works to create this environment for us employees and employers. So that means the person who owns and runs an organization or licensed childcare center and the staff who come into a licensed childcare center and work within the licensed childcare center, they all have rights under the Employment Services Act. And there are rights and obligations. So there's obligations for employers as to what they need to do, what they need to offer in terms of safety, in terms of wages, in terms of work environment, in terms of hours. So there's lots of things that the employer is required to do by law, which includes vacation and sick time and benefits and different things like that. And then the employee has the right, they need to know their rights, but also they need to understand different things under the Employment Services Act, which are, what they need to do as well as employees, how they can keep themselves safe. And those things are all included under the Employment Standard Act. And then there's a lot of education and resources, and there's a lot of links and things like that you can find from the Ministry of Labor. And if you did have issues or concerns with your employment or, your employer, you would then go to the Ministry of Labor and file concerns, file complaints, and find out more information regarding your rights. So that's how they're used. So they're all governed by Ontario. And just like the Ministry of Education has the information and they have the section and they have the employees that support licensed childcare, the Ministry of Labor also has employees and they also have individuals that go out to workplaces to make sure they're safe or when there's complaints or concerns. And then they come out and inspect different organizations as well. Minimum wage is different it's different in different provinces. It's different in different countries, and it's also different with different jobs. So most employees are eligible for minimum wage, and this is whether they work full-time, part-time, casual, or paid hourly. So there's different rates of pay, but then there are some jobs that are exempt from minimum wage, and they could be making more in some cases. And I know for students sometimes that was in the past a little bit less, the student wages. So click on the link and you'll see more information about minimum wage. Click the link, and I want you to see what the different wages are based on the different roles. So we're moving to unionized work environment. It's an organization that is formed to protect the rights and interests of its members. So you can have an organization and they could be a part of a larger union, because there are many unions within Ontario. And the union is a group that protects their rights and interests. And when they join this group, they become a member of this group, and the group advocates for them. So again, there's advocacy in there for different rights that they want, or different things that they want to see from the employer. Within the unionized environment, they can also be a part of a larger unionized environment. So the union could be a particular union that's not only for that childcare center or that company, but it's a whole area within the municipality or part of Ontario, and they all are in this one union or one group, but they have different branches and different locals, they call it, within different organizations, but ultimately they're of the same union. So within a unionized environment, they could they typically have a document called the collective agreement, and within that collective agreement, it pretty much sums up and explains the different items that the unionized members or the head of the union for their members want from the organization or from the employers. And that document also sums up and identifies what the employer has agreed to. So it's collectively created and maintained by both the union and the employers, and it's collectively agreed upon. So typically, they have individuals who represent the union and individuals who represent organization, who typically sit down and negotiate the different terms, which can go from work hours to benefits to vacation time. Hiring, lots of different things can go into a collective agreement, and they sit down, they agree to the terms and all these things for a certain period of time in most cases, and then they would sign off on this agreement. The employees and the unionized employees do want something, or want something changed or updated or improved. That when it's time, when that deadline or time frame has expired for that particular collective agreement, they both get to go back to the table and negotiate. Sometimes during that time, both sides do not agree, so they can't finish this collective agreement and essentially let their members know. Sometimes they don't agree, and what tends to happen is they have to go back and forth with this negotiation. But sometimes different organizations, some different levels of government in some cases, when talks break down and what is being asked from the union and what is being accepted by the employer do not align, then you sometimes have the union that is in a legal position to strike. This varies, and sometimes they might get into this position and then they do come into agreement and they negotiate, and then they finish and they can sign the collective agreement. Sometimes it doesn't work, and the unionized employees are in a legal position to strike, meaning that they can strike based on their rights. And then sometimes they do strike, and then brings another opportunity for the employer and the unionized members to have to come together again and come with an agreement. In contrast, a non-unionized environment is an organization that does not have any employees who are members of a union, a labor union. So these employees, when they come in, when they need something from the organization, when they need something, from, management or things like that, they work directly with management and directly with the employer